SHOWTIME!
If there's one villain in gaming who needs no introduction, it's Bowser. Immortal enemy of the Mario Brothers, kidnapper of Princess Peach, staunch believer in wage equality, loving father, and the most recognizable bad guy that video games have to offer, there is absolutely no doubt that Bowser's earned his place as one of gaming's most defining characters. When one reminisces on video game bosses, memories of battles against the Koopa King very often aren't too far behind. And it's quite rare that you'll find a list of greatest villains in gaming without Bowser's name listed somewhere on its ranks. But while Bowser is undoubtedly one of the greats, how great is another question. The guy may be a militaristic conqueror with dreams of a universal empire and the manpower to back it up, but he also plays tennis and golf with Daisy and Toad on Saturdays and makes sure his son doesn't play video games for too long. That's something that should erode a villain's mystique rapidly. If he's doing goofy stuff like this, how can you even take the guy seriously as a threat? Moreover, despite his intimidating appearance, Bowser's been beaten by Mario more times than most are willing to count. Yet he's still making appearances as the series' big bad villain based on his strength alone. And it's not like he's completely transitioned into a comedy character or is just naturally a funny design like fellow villainous great Dr. Eggman.
Now you know why I am the best!
Sometimes, players are meant to fear Bowser on appearance and stature alone. But how can they after years of beating him into the ground over and over again? Bowser's an icon, sure, but so is the right Pong paddle. So are dozens of the Koopa King's contemporaries who have managed to endure into the modern age. Bowser might as well just be lucky that the Mario series has carried him to a spot of immortality, right? It's not an uncommon idea that the guy is just great by default, because he's attached to gaming's flagship series that actually has a consistent recurring villain between entries. No change necessary, no depth necessary. Bowser is cool because Bowser is cool. And because he's been here for so long, he deserves a legacy amount of respect, right? But that is not nearly enough for Bowser, and I'm confident that most people know that. Bowser isn't content to just be a final boss, or yet another playable character in the Mario spin-offs roster. No. Bowser is a villain built specifically for video games. Bowser has defined what it means to be a gaming baddie more than any other antagonist, paving the way for bigger and better boss fights while still keeping a mystique all his own. He's made himself an irreplaceable part of the Mario universe, arguably its second most important character behind the plumber himself, and adds so much to its world, mythos, and identity by just being himself. Bowser is a character that constantly reflects on his past and himself, and instead of reinventing the wheel every time, builds on his prior appearances to add to his characterization, creating a shockingly complex, yet instantly understandable antagonist, who throughout all of his struggles and defeats, is always developing into a more complete image of what it means to be a video game villain. And because Bowser is never satisfied, because he's always growing, because he's always looking to develop some aspect of himself to capitalize on his last appearance, he isn't just a great video game villain. To this day, Bowser is still the greatest villain in all of video games. Let's start with Bowser's most obvious strength, his general appearance and gameplay application. Bowser is a classic gaming boss, first appearing in Super Mario Bros. In 1985. As such, his appearance needs to immediately inform the player of the danger he possesses, what kind of options they can or can't use against him, and ultimately show that, yeah, he's a pretty bad guy. And Bowser is ticking all of those boxes better than most could hope for. Original design showed Bowser as simply an angrier, bipedal Koopa Troopa, but his final design took more direct inspiration from Alakazam the Great's King Gruesome, with a more pronounced jaw, horns, and spikes, as well as the aggressive Chinese soft-shell turtle. All of this adds up to Bowser's design saying three simple things. He's big, he's tough, and you can't jump on him. That last one being especially important as Bowser is the first enemy in Super Mario Bros. That the player cannot jump on, literal fire excluded. It also represents something of a turning point for Mario. The plumber can normally take on any challenge with his athleticism and skill alone. But Bowser is an enemy that he's just not strong enough to beat head on. Instead, Mario has to use the environment in order to overcome the crafty Koopa King. From a basic level, Bowser is designed specifically to counter Mario. Jumps don't work, he shoots out fire so that Mario can't just stay still and this whole thing can be an actual fight. And Bowser can hop around almost as high as the plumber himself, body blocking Mario from simply bouncing over. Only with proper timing and skill, or just arriving at the right time, can Mario sneak past Bowser and steal a win from his physically superior foe. You don't overpower Bowser so much as you outplay Bowser. Or you come in with a super mushroom and tank a hit, or a fire flower to
show me your true form
him from afar. Which, of course, requires Mario to go untouched through the villain's lair in order to show up in a superpowered form, proving that Mario can and will take on Bowser's worst to save the princess. In this one simple appearance, Bowser is doing a whole lot to establish his relationship with both Mario and the player. He's a big bad brute that you can only face head on if you got through his traps unscathed. Can't be beaten with Mario's basic skill set, and is foiled by his own hubris again and again and again. This relationship would go on to define future Bowser appearances as a boss. Mario 3 played with the verticality of the game, challenging Mario to avoid Bowser in close quarters combat, tricking the reptilian region into tearing through his own arena. Mario World limits Mario's ability to jump high with the Koopa Clown Car, needing to use the new grabbing and throwing mechanics to nail Bowser with his own Mecha Koopas. Mario 64...
So long, Bowser!
Yeah, that one's obvious, but it's a great introduction to the idea of 3D movement, requiring players to outmaneuver a foe that's constantly trying to prevent them from grabbing at his weak point, evolving with a fire that homes in on Mario, and teleportation to make it trickier to do so in the refights. Galaxy 2, 3D Land, 3D World all take unique aspects of Mario's movement and both limit them and challenge them. Bowser always testing each game's unique quirks and forcing the player to show their understanding of it. Mario always looking for the right moment to capitalize on Bowser's overcommitment to absolutely flattening him. Odyssey pushes this a step further, taking the expected capitalizing on Bowser's weaknesses shtick and having him fake Mario out, pretending to be reeling so he can take one last cheap shot at the plumber during his final battle. Showing after all this time, the old Koop still has new tricks. Even in the new Super Mario Bros. Games, perhaps the least inspired Mario titles thematically, Bowser proves his chops as an effective challenge, at first remixing his original encounters with dry and giant Bowser battles, then subverting them completely with showdowns ending with massive Bowser chases through obstacle courses. The Titanic Turtle doing everything he can to stop Mario from clearing one final level and foiling his plans. Bowser has the occasional miss. Galaxy does have Bowser rivaling Mario with his own star spin, but the plumber can take him on pretty even footing with Baby Luma, resetter of universes, by his side. And there is always the pretty mindless excursion that is...
Mario! How dare you disturb my family vacation?
But all of Bowser's bouts capitalize on the new mechanics or design philosophies of whatever game he's in. And while that seems like such a simple philosophy to follow, contemporaries from other legendary series are normally pretty content to stick with the same formula with a couple new attacks or mechs or monster designs each time. For the sheer amount of times that he appears, Bowser is surprisingly never content to rest on his laurels, changing up his fight every time he can, with the only through line between them being he's always naturally stronger than Mario, but the Mushroom Kingdom's hero will always find a way to get the upper hand. And when Bowser lets his power loose, it can be terrifying. Yoshi's Island is the first time we see Bowser breaking all of his limits. And boy oh boy does he make an impression. The toddler tyrant becomes an absolutely monstrous figure, looming over the horizon, slowly approaching to crush absolutely everything in his wake. The battle is a race against time, Yoshi desperately trying to belt the beast back with a catapult barrage of eggs. Footholds grow more scarce as boulders rain from the heavens, Bowser doing everything he can to make sure the brave dinosaur falls, even if he has to raise his entire castle to the ground in order to do it. It's a heart-pounding battle, the inevitability of Bowser's absolute destruction inching ever closer to a player with every mistake. Every flutter jump to nab an egg, another close brush with death. It's a set-piece moment ingrained into the hearts of anyone who's ever cleared Yoshi's Island. And it's Bowser. The same Bowser who gets foiled time and time again, constantly trying new things and making mistakes along the way, is able to give a fight like this. And it's not an isolated instance either. Giga Bowser rises from the depths to raise the Demon King in a more gruesome form, not flinching from the attacks of any foe who dare challenge him. Or Fury Bowser, a herald of destruction who is glad to rain down a hellfire of flaming spikes on Mario, and even his own son, destroying everything he can see and untouchable by anything less than great Super Saiyan God Mario.
Meow.
In spite of his many defeats, in spite of the ease in which he can be dispatched, Bowser can still strike fear into players. And that is the key to his longevity. No matter how much time has passed and how many times he gets knocked down, Bowser has never faltered as a credible villain. Every fight with Bowser is a new experience, designed to test Mario or whoever he's facing's capabilities in a different way, challenging them to use all they've learned to overcome him. Sometimes he'll try to be crafty, sometimes he'll look for an honorable duel, and sometimes he'll go all out, not caring what he wrecks in order to finally slay his adversary. But no matter what happens, no matter what sensibilities Bowser tries to tackle, taking Bowser down is almost always a satisfying capstone to any of Mario's adventures. All of Bowser's fights exist for the sake of enhancing the video game surrounding him. and his personality, that of a prideful brute that'll try everything to beat his foe while giving them their fair shot to hit him right back, makes him work every single time, regardless of the fight's actual difficulty. And it's this personality, that driving force, that elevates Bowser beyond just a great boss. It turns him into arguably the best written character Nintendo has ever had. Before 1996, Bowser was a fine baddie, but he was admittedly losing some of his edge. The Ox King inspiration might have led to an intimidating design, but he was already a playable racer in Super Mario Kart. The fearsome Demon King now losing to the likes of Toad and Koopa Troopa in silly go-kart races.
I'm the best!
He's had embarrassing losses in edutainment games, an inspired and goofy performance by Dennis Hopper in the Super Mario Bros. Movie.
I'd like the Koopa Special, Dino, Lizard, Hold the Mammal, and Spicy.
A fun romp through the Super Mario Adventures comics, and had more of a dumb, oafish demon portrayal in Super Mario Bros. The Great Mission to Save Princess Peach. But Bowser lacked a unifying voice for his character. Well, except for...
Then, as the old saying goes, he who coops and runs away lives to coop another day.
In spite of all the good he was doing as a boss, Bowser was a mess of a character, ranging from Demon King to Saturday morning cartoon villain to megalomaniacal germaphobe political candidate. There was no cohesion to Bowser's character, nothing that stopped him from being a collection of silly tropes and jokes. A gag villain made to fill any role out of necessity. I mean, he's Mario's bad guy, so if Mario's doing something, yeah, he can fit the role, I guess. But through this confusion, a little game came along and changed the way Bowser would be portrayed and seen forever. Super Mario RPG is one of the most important games that the Mario series has ever had. It's the franchise's swan song for the Super Nintendo, releasing right before the Nintendo 64 would thunder onto store shelves. It features the first look at Mario's world as more than a collection of levels, bringing together its various races and communities and kingdoms, celebrating the lands that Mario would traverse. It established the writing style of all future Mario RPGs. Adventurous, but irreverent and incredibly silly, cracking jokes in the same breath that it gave time and development to its characters in. And most importantly, it would establish and solidify the character of King Bowser Koopa for all the decades that followed. Bowser's introduced right at the start of the game, and fulfills his usual role in record time. Kidnap Princess Peach, Bowser's Castle, fight Mario in a battle where Mario has to use the environment to his advantage to win, lose. Oh my god, he's so sad, the poor little baby! All within 10 minutes at best. It's the Mario formula boiled down to its most basic elements and mocked after only 11 years of what was already becoming a really predictable story. But then, the weaponized world of Square literally crashes into the Mario world. The Smithy Gang taking Bowser's Keep as their own and setting out to spread a more traditional RPG vibe across the wonderland of the Mushroom Kingdom. And on being defeated, dethroned, and actively deposed as the main villain, Bowser fights back. He rallies the scattered remnants of his troops, marching them around the world, his numbers slowly depleting as he moves from town to town, until finally, he finds himself alone. He reminisces on the days of battling Mario, the princess screaming, being the one in the position of power. And in this moment of weakness, he turns around and sees Mario right behind him.
Hello!
And though he has to talk himself into it, trying his best to play it cool and not show his emotions, insisting that it's Mario joining his team, Bowser joins the party, teaming up with Mario to defeat a greater evil. For the rest of the game, Bowser isn't just a great character. He absolutely steals the show in every single scene he's in. He sweet talks an abused Chain Chomp into opening up before turning it into an equipable weapon, crashes a wedding with his brute strength alone, terrifies brainwashed minions and deserters in his keep just by standing around, and even writes haiku on how his brilliance is wasted on these lesser villains. He's got a weapon that's just throwing Mario directly into an enemy's face, playing on his antagonism with the plumber, even while they're forming a unified front. But underneath all of that aggression is a softer side. Bowser finding one of his minions who's left the Koopa Troop with kids, and giving him his blessing to live a happy life. Or treating his old caretaker, Kamek, kindly after beating the brainwashing out of him. Bowser takes a one-dimensional villain profile, being evil for the sake of it, and dissects it from every angle, turning him equal parts sympathetic and hilarious. To Bowser, being the villain, the #1 bad guy in the world, is everything. A status symbol that proves he's the biggest, baddest brute around. That reaffirms how great his physical strength and charisma really are. He is motivated by his pride in himself and his status. His desire to cement his place as top dog, taking priority over any other thought in his mind, and making him eager to prove that he is just as good as he hypes himself up to be. Yet underneath that brash exterior, he truly does care for all the Goombas that you crush beneath your feet, and is as respected and feared as he is sincerely loved by his minions. He has his oafish moments. He's got the worst armor in the game and not great spells. He's more often than not a bit dense and gets lost in his own bravado more than a couple times. But he's Bowser, baby. Super Mario RPG takes what was just a cool design with a straightforward motivation and turns him into a three-dimensional character, one with clear motivations and reasons for being the way he is, and one that constantly toys with the idea of what being a villain truly means. And over 25 years removed from Bowser's big breakout role, yeah, I'd say he did a pretty amazing job. All of Bowser's future appearances would be informed and strengthened by this one role. Why is he racing go-karts and teeing up with Diddy Kong and Rosalina? Because he has to be the best. That's what a good villain is supposed to do.
Amateur.
Why does this tyrant care about the results of a board game? Because it would be a pretty crummy party without Bowser, that's why. It's his duty and pleasure to crash it. Bowser loves being evil because it's a reaffirmation of everything that makes him personally great. And of course, nowhere is this better explored than in his future RPG appearances. Paper Mario shows Bowser stealing a holy relic from his world's gods and using it to nearly kill Mario, taking the opportunity to cause mischief all around the world. But here's also where he starts to develop feelings for Princess Peach, in the games at least. Wishing on stars that she'll like him and constantly trying to flex on how he's so much more powerful than Mario now. What started as a political power play and trying to prevent the princess's magic from foiling his plans has turned into an actual affection for his captive, as well as enhancing his rivalry with Mario into a more personal contest. Girls are watching now.
You're doing great.
Superstar Saga shows a more diplomatic Bowser, willing to team up with the brothers Mario in order to get back at some villain who stole Princess Peach's voice. The prideful Koopa King not willing to let anyone mess with his damsel to distress. However, partway through the game, he ends up with amnesia, finding himself the eager sidekick to the master thief Popple. As the rookie, Bowser is an earnest cheerleader for his new boss, enthusiastic to use his strength to please the people around him, showing how his evil upbringing has influenced him and just how important using his power for someone's benefit is to Bowser. It just so happens that his own benefit is usually the best when Bowser has his right mind about him. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door shows us Bowser at his most comedic, desperately trying to insert himself into a plot that seems to take joy in leaving him behind. Bowser is always one step behind the player, knowing that someone else has kidnapped Princess Peach and that Mario is up to something involving a treasure hunt, and desperate to reclaim his relevance. And every single time, he makes a fool of himself in each encounter. Bowser is an utter joke here, doing everything he can to crash his simple kidnap the princess story into a far more complex narrative, even incidentally being dispatched by Mario in a random wrestling match midway through the story with no fanfare, until, through sheer force of will, he collapses directly into the penultimate boss fight, inadvertently saving both Peach and Mario from a hostage situation because no other villain is gonna take his spotlight. Super Paper Mario takes this form of Bowser to its logical extreme. A new villain setting up a sham wedding between the dastardly despot and Princess Peach that is so utterly ridiculous and against the laws of the universe that it summons a dark heart of chaos threatening to end all realities in a gaping void, which, well, okay, rude on like a metacontextual level. Bowser joins Mario's side once again, after both losing in a fight against him and having to be convinced that there won't be a world to rule over if all worlds get destroyed, and that most of his minions are being brainwashed and bossed around by an even more evil boss than him. And that's more than enough to get Bowser on board. After trouncing everything in his path and insulting any touchy-feely nonsense he sees on the way, Bowser actually ends his story here with a heroic sacrifice, holding up a collapsing ceiling so that the Mario Brothers and Princess Peach can run to safety. Go! Sure, he does it as something of a contest of strength with a burly mini-boss to prove that, yeah, Bowser is the strongest around. No one gets to show him up when it comes to raw power. But he ultimately does come around to care for those who he finds deserve his respect. Whether that be his minions, O-Chunks, or even Mario himself.
Wowza!
I mean, he gets better. Like, Luigi even says he survived worse. But we get to see Bowser out of his comfort zone, forced to play the hero and not even on his own terms, and still trying to sell himself as the grade A final boss he believes himself to be. He is still always evolving as a character, in spite of the inherent simplicity that his design and role require of him. And simple is perhaps the perfect term for his largest starring role. SHOWTIME! Mario and Luigi, Bowser's inside story.
Bowser really does suck. And I mean that in a good way.
Here, Bowser is pushed to all of his logical extremes, using his time in the protagonist's spotlight to say as many funny quips as he can, beat up as many chumps as he can see, and prove the overwhelming strength and coolness of the King of Awesome as many times as he can. Bowser's story starts with him rushing to the Mushroom Kingdom's aid as its subjects become infected with a hot new fetish disease, the Blorbs. Diplomacy from Bowser goes terribly, And after getting trounced by Mario so quickly that even he's disappointed in himself, Bowser is so desperate for success that he eats some weird drugs from some dude he met in the forest who definitely didn't get him possessed by a witch before. And after being used by his new dealer to get the Mario Brothers out of the way and having his castle taken from under him, Bowser goes on a globe-trotting trek to reclaim his honor, home, and crush anyone who's in his path. Inside Story features Bowser at his largest. He's the most brash he's ever been. He's the dumbest he's ever been. He's the most headstrong he's ever been. But he's also the strongest he's ever been. The player gets to feel the sheer joy of Bowser's raw power. Understand why he just plunges in head first to every situation, fists flying. Get why his minions respect this idiot who fails again and again so much. Bowser may have a lot of faults, but quitter is never one of them. And he'll pull off absolutely ridiculous feats of strength, grow to epic proportions, and never, ever doubt his incredible power to get his way. Everything that Bowser stood for as a villain is put right into the player's hands to let loose. Everyone able to experience the prideful, single-minded joy of being the Koopa King. And as he ends up punching out a dark god with his bare fists, there's a deep appreciation for the guy there. Yeah, this is the dumbest, most oafish Bowser ever put in a game, but damn it, this is Bowser! The pure joy of being able to play as an overpowered boss is set loose in an entire RPG built around him, and also the Mario Brothers, but we don't talk about them half as much. You are Bowser! You are great! Everything that Bowser is and has been built up to be is instantly understood by just hitting things in the face, even without thinking! And Bowser wouldn't have it any other way. After perhaps his most defining role, Bowser would continue right on refining his character. He still has his appearances in RPGs, and though they would generally be simplified compared to his Super Paper and Inside Story portrayals, he's remained the determined, prideful meathead he'd built himself up to be. And also got possessed by a symbiote once just because he wanted a rainbow shell. Which is adorable. His relationship with his son, Bowser Jr., was given a far greater emphasis. Bowser being portrayed as a caring father who just wants the best for his little boy. The Koopa King would constantly check in on Jr., talk about his parenting philosophies, and generally make sure that his Koopa Prince would grow into the incredible future tyrant he was destined to be. And in Bowser Jr.'s journey, a game that no one played, the effect that Bowser's had on his kid is fully shown. Jr. not believing that his father is inherently wrong or evil, it's all a matter of perspective. Sometimes you just want to be a guy who conquers the Mushroom Kingdom, and that makes you cool.
That's my boy. Well put, son.
And, as perhaps the culmination of his character growth in the main series, Super Mario Odyssey portrays an incredibly competent Bowser, always one step ahead of Mario, plundering the entire world as he prepares a perfect wedding between himself and Princess Peach. He's as conniving as he's ever been, puts his romantic rivalry with Mario right into the forefront of the game, and actually gets a win over Mario in the opening cutscene, establishing his immense power narratively for once. By the end of the game, Bowser is a threat the player is glad to take down once again. And then... Bowser decides to combine everything he's ever stood for into one final stretch. Taking advantage of the game's mechanics like he always does, Bowser gives the player an opportunity to possess him with Cappy. And for the first time in a mainline Mario game, take the Koopa King out for a joyride. Bowser is just as adept of a platformer as Mario is, but with much more strength, able to destroy anything in front of him with his claws and endure twice the punishment that the paltry plumber could take. Everything about this sequence is absolutely euphoric, selling one simple fantasy. Being Bowser is an utter power trip. It's fun to just muscle through everything directly in front of you with reckless abandon. And you beat this absolute beast on a regular basis through skill and grit alone. What a guy. So that's an overview of Bowser, a character designed around being an obstacle for the player to use their skills to overcome, and then characterized around that to make sure he'd want to be that big, fearsome obstacle, all while adding flavor and pushing the character forward as part of the Mario universe. And on its own, that's incredible. The platformers and RPGs alone creating an utterly fantastic villain. But there are dozens upon dozens of spin-offs that further reinforce all of Bowser's best qualities. Mario Kart features Bowser as a super heavyweight in all of his appearances, featuring the highest top speed and the power to push anyone he wants around, but poor turning and acceleration. Bowser's inherently the best, but you gotta be perfect to maintain it. Mario sports games always make sure to max out Bowser's power, with blazing fastballs and killer drives that would make anyone else envious. But they come at the cost of moving like, well, a giant turtle, and throw any kind of finesse out the window. Smash Bros. Features Bowser as the heaviest member of its roster, an utter tank of a character who may be light on references and unfortunately bestial, but can bust through shields like they're nothing, doesn't flinch at all at weak attacks, and can utterly demolish anyone who'd stand up to him with just a few devastating moves. All of Bowser's dozens of playable appearances contribute to his identity, a bruiser with the most devastating power imaginable. But throw him off his game and prevent him from smacking you around with skill, and he's got nothing else to rely on. When you play as Bowser, no matter what game you're enjoying, you are the boss character. And you can dominate like the Koopa King, or be humiliated just as easily as you can jump around Bowser in the main series. And then there's Mario Party. Most Mario spin-offs, by nature of having Bowser be playable, need to keep the Koopa King in check, in line with the rest of the cast. In theory, at least. But what happens when you don't just take the limiters off of Bowser, but tell him to go wild and bully everyone underneath him? Well, you get Bowser at his most absolutely and delightfully devilish. Mario Party Bowser is as much of a terror as he is a troll, shaking up board events on a whim and injecting humor wherever possible. Who can forget him fat-shaming victims who wear his inner tube, dressing as a cowboy and threatening people's lives, or inventing a machine that can generate a gold coin out of thin air? That costs 20 coins from you to operate. Mini-games for the survival of your bank account. Mini-games where he'll bribe these idiots to be the one to lose first to see them in pain. Chance time that is rigged to only favor him. Chance time? The revival of the sickle and star for the glory of an equal world under Koopa. Rejecting his beliefs and setting up a capitalist emporium on the ruins of some shop he demolished. Bowser is just delighted to do anything and everything he can to make your life specifically miserable. And the best part is, he affects everyone equally. Sure, someone who lands on a Bowser space has the greatest odds of getting screwed over, but Bowser can easily drag down everyone around them, or even occasionally help them, throwing them coins out of pity if they're poor, or giving them an item designed to steal from others. Bowser is first and foremost an agent of chaos in Mario Party, proving the series' philosophy that anyone can be a winner, but everyone can be a loser. And dragging every player down to the bottom is just absolutely hysterical. Bowser is the perfect villain for the series, getting some of his best lines and funniest schemes while also getting players to curse his name more times than he could ever manage as a platforming boss. And when they tried to sell a game on the back of you can be as massive of a dick as Bowser now, well, Wii U aside, that proves he's doing something right. And finally, with that, we still don't have the full breadth of Bowser's influence. We've got the Super Mario Bros. Movie, showing Bowser as an unstoppable wrecking ball that the entire world is right to fear, before hard pivoting into his love of peaches. Yet even at his most humorous, he can only show affection through villainy.
I'll be sacrificing them in your honor.
To Bowser, true love is the lives we snuffed out along the way. There's his appearances as Baby Bowser through the Yoshi series, more RPGs, how players use him in Mario Maker, world building done through theme parks. Look at this look he gives Mario in Sparks of Hope. There is no way he can look weak in front of his rival. But I think you get the idea. What started as a simple but well-designed obstacle evolved into a boss fight that always challenged the idea of movement and new concepts that Mario wanted to explore. As a character, he evolved into a deconstruction of what being a villain in a game really meant, turning into a prideful meathead whose overwhelming power and ambition would always see him through. As a design, he evolved into whatever the game at hand needed him to be, a charming buffoon one moment and a terrifying monster the next, while never feeling out of touch or out of place with his character. As a playable character, he became an absolute power fantasy, monstrous strength mixed with an unga-bunga mentality that could easily crush anything in his path, as long as he could keep any of his foes from dancing around him. And as a villain, what was once just a series of scribbles and ideas for a really mean turtle has become the most defining bad guy in all of video games. There are dozens, if not hundreds of reasons to enjoy Bowser's villainy, and tons of different aspects that many can latch onto and say is their favorite part of Bowser. And each and every single one of them adds up to making Bowser the exceptional character and villain that he is today. Villains since Bowser have accomplished many things. They're master manipulators that toy with players' emotions. They're charming goofballs with the right amount of gumption to always be a pleasure to fight. They're one-hit wonders that use their single game in specific to catapult them into legend. Bowser has been there, done that, checking off every single box, doing absolutely everything he can, and every one of his hundreds of appearances all contribute to the aura of the Koopa King. He can be a mastermind with ambitions of a galactic empire 1 minute, and the king of guys who talk to posters the next. A troll and a model father, an utter dunce and an inspiring leader, a horrible monster and a hopeless romantic. And every single one of these appearances is united through the incredible charisma and prideful personality of Bowser. Bowser is a villain who is always growing, where every story told about him adds to his legend, where each new gameplay gimmick he throws onto himself is just another way that he's trying to beat Mario at his own game. where every single new Mario game can be looked forward to with the excitement of, oh man, can you imagine what Bowser's going to do in this one? Bowser isn't just a video game villain. He is video game villainy. In gameplay, in character development, in design, in mood, in application, Bowser has looked at every single aspect of how to be an effective villain in a game and made it part of who he is. I may personally have villains who I love more than Bowser, and there may be many who do individual elements of this whole evil shtick better than old King Koopa does. But as a total package, with hundreds of games, dozens of stories, fights, playable appearances, and millions of lives, coins, and stars lost to the guy backing him up, with those numbers growing to this very day, there is no competition. After all this time, and perhaps for decades to come, Bowser is still the greatest villain in all of gaming. Long live the king.
Mario!
Let's go!